Samo Odd Show. It is a lovely morning. It is Friday, June 7th. I'm your host, Jordan Frank. I am joined, as always, by Ben Reza. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. Happy Friday as always. Hanging in there. What's going on in California? You're up early watching tennis?
Yeah, up early watching tennis. Didn't quite wake up in time for Rafa and Roger, which started at about, I think, 4 a.m. local time. A
You
little
didn't
bit
miss much.
rough. But kind of tuning in now, so disregard it if I look away a few times. Don't worry about me. I'm just watching Djokovic and team on my TV here. We are joined, as we have a couple times over the last month or so, by Evan Schwartz, because we are going to get into the Belmont a little bit here. Evan, what's going on? Welcome back.
Same thing here. Too early in California to catch those tennis matches. I'll rely on you for TM. Maybe I'll tune in, but I'll try and not stay distracted and be sharp and focused and ready to go to talk some horse racing for you.
Well, that's why we bring in the big guns like you. You got that focus, you got the knowledge, and that's what we like to hear. Before we get into anything, I do want to mention our sponsor, EV Analytics. They've been a sponsor now for a few weeks. If you need betting models, real-time odds, betting stats, any kind of data for your betting pleasure, check out their site. We're going to be working with them going forward and have some cool ideas that I've mentioned. So stay tuned on that. Gentlemen, before we get into the Belmont, I think I want to talk about a few things first, and then we'll kind of do the last segment on the Belmont so people can jump there if need be. But first thing I wanted to talk about was boxing. It's not something that we have touched on, I don't think, ever on this show. I'm a huge boxing fan. It's hard to say that it's not a dying sport, which saddens me. But we had an incredible heavyweight fight, which also is something I have not said in many a year. Klitschko's have been dominant for so many years, and there just hasn't been anything worth talking about. But I want to at least reference this fight from last weekend between Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua. Did you guys see it at all? Have you had any takeaways? It's been all over the news. I'm sure you guys have seen a little bit about it. How about you, Ben? I'll start with you.
Yeah, I saw it postscript. I had heard about it, but I think just years and years of just dwindling heavyweights. I love boxing. I wish it was thriving a little more. So I saw the upset, obviously. Somewhat charismatic character. So I think that can only be a good thing. They need some polarizing people up there if it's going to gain any interest.
Yeah, agreed. How about you, Evan? You follow it at all?
I also did not catch it live. I caught it after the fact, and I have seen the match in its entirety since then. And Joshua just looked like the man that just was not prepared. He underestimated Ruiz and got his butt whooped. And I think it's great for the sport. It's fun, especially the fact that now a Mexican has won the heavyweight division. We just don't really see that, and it's going to get a lot more fans. And maybe the out of shape guy at home now thinks that he can hang with some heavyweights. Who knows?
Yeah, that was where I was going to go. Is this the death of the fitness industry in its entirety? Who needs to be in shape, right?
Right.
Pretty insane. Just looking at it from that perspective. But just to kind of put a button on it, Joshua, was undefeated, was 22-0, had won 21 of his 22 fights by knockout, was a minus 3,500 going into the fight. And Ruiz coming back was plus 1,200. And there's already odds out for the rematch, which everybody basically expects is going to happen, which is the norm in boxing. Usually it's set up, within a week or two of the first fight. But Joshua is now at minus 350. So he's come down 10x from his minus 3,500 to minus 350. And then Ruiz is plus 275 on the comeback. You guys have any takes on that?
I mean, just from my limited hear an echo, but I like Joshua and I'll say it's right. So there you go.
I don't see how you don't absolutely crush Joshua at that. Like he probably was caught off guard in the first match. You would assume he's not going to be caught off guard in the second match. Maybe Ruiz is just that much better than him, but I don't see it that way. At that minus 350, I don't know how you absolutely don't love that line and try and crush it.
I'm on board with you guys. I also love Joshua there. It looks like if he gets upset again, the show might end. We might all lose our bankrolls,
That'll
and
be it for us.
this would be our post-mortem episode. It could all point back to today, guys.
We probably have some time till that match actually happens, though, so we can try and build a big bankroll before then, because it's boxing. It probably won't happen for another at least 6 to 8 months.
That's a good point. That's a good point, and that's a good transition into the French. I do want to talk about the French Open, and like we referenced from the get-go, 3 out of the 4 semis already finished early this morning. Rafa, easy win against Federer, even as a minus 950 favorite. It was really no sweat. On the women's side, which is what I want to talk to you guys about and get your thoughts on, we have Vondrousova, who won the semi against Konta. And we talked last week, Ben, that I have a future on Vondrousova to win the tournament. Pretty big future. And I do want to tip my cap to one of our coworkers. He does the projections, our tennis projections. Really sharp guy. His name is Blaine. I can't think of. I think it's Jungwerb is his name on our Slack channel.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Ben?
Yep.
Something like that. He tipped me off, and he actually wrote a WTA preview, which you can find on our site. Doesn't do much good for you now, but you can at least see that it was up a few weeks ago, and he hit on her at 100 to 1. And this kind of goes, we've talked about this concept in the past. I know, Ben, you've done an article on the site about hedging and when you should do it and when you shouldn't, and when you can find plus EV spots. If you have this ticket for Saturday at 100 to 1, I'm slightly below 100 to 1. Is there any point to hedge such a huge future?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is where, people get, I don't want to say trigger happy, but at the same time, there's so many rounds. You start hedging in the quarters and then the semis, and you're just losing equity fast. But if you've held on, you're not facing a massive number. I assume that she's slight dog.
Yeah, she's plus 132 in the final.
So you're not, that's minus 150, 160-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
On the other side, you're really not giving up that much. So it's about risk tolerance. Obviously, you can free roll it. You can go more aggressive and guarantee yourself profit, on both sides. It's just about finding that right balance based on what you've seen and based on how much equity you really have. Yeah.
Evan, you have any thoughts on that? Had any kind of hedge opportunities before on a big ticket?
Yeah, I mean, it's you've made money. You can guarantee yourself at this point to make money. You've gotten to the final. I agree with Ben that you don't want to start hedging too early because then you lose some of your equity. But you've gotten to the point where there's only 2 scenarios at this point, and you have one of them covered for risking a little and winning a lot that you can make somewhere in the middle and guarantee yourself a profit. Who doesn't love that? I mean, yeah, sometimes the greedy bettor says, well, I'll make less profit. But the goal in gambling and sports betting is to make money. And you can guarantee yourself to do that in this match. Why not take that opportunity to do so?
Yeah, I mean, you both obviously bring up good points. And I think she matches up really well against Barty. She's such a good – I mean, she's a teenager, which is one thing maybe that kind of counterbalances that. She's so young, Vondrousova, that – being in this spot, you just don't know how a 19-year-old is going to react. So part of me definitely wants to just kind of let it ride and maybe just hedge slightly to cover my wager. I'll probably take a little bit more on the other side just to guarantee a little bit of profit.
It's just hard. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we've talked about this a lot with futures. If she loses in the finals, you get the same as if she loses in the first round. Like, there's no consolation prize. So it's just a tough pill to swallow to not grab something for your time and say, you know what, win or lose, this was a great spot, because it obviously was, but it's nice to get paid off a little.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Do you guys have any takes on the final? We can't really talk about the men's final. We don't know yet. Djokovic and Thiem are playing right now, and it's one set apiece. Obviously, the winner is going to face Rafa and going to be not a huge underdog. They won't be as big as an underdog as Federer was today, but my guess is they'd be, well, if it's Djokovic, probably at least 2 to 1, probably around there. Team maybe a little bit more of a long shot. Do you guys have any thoughts on the finals right now?
I hope it's Joker. I think he can give him the best match. He's one of the 2. We were talking about this before the show. One of the 2 guys who's beat Nadal here. And I don't want to say quietly, but the guy is on an incredible run. This would be 4 straight if he can do it. So I hope it's him. I think he can give Nadal the best test, but he's unstoppable at Roland Garros.
Yeah, no question. How about you, Evan?
I mean, I would agree with everything that Ben said again. I mean, it's just I don't think it matters who he plays. It's Nadal, it's Roland Garros. You're just gonna have to suck up a big number because I don't think he's losing. I think, like Ben said, Joker can probably give him a little more of a match. Joker is the world number one for a reason, but Roland Garros is a different animal, and Nadal he just doesn't lose there. I was debating talking about taking Fed at plus 550 we didn't have to do this show before that match happened, because you're getting 5 or 6 to 1 on Federer. That's unheard of. But then he clearly should have been the 5 or 6 to 1 because he got smoked and didn't even win a set. And listen, Nadal, I think, will win the championship. Whoever he plays, Djokovic will give him a better match. Maybe you look at some of the set lines or game lines and try and get a better price of taking the underdog if you want to go that route.
Yeah, I know some pretty sharp people who do like Team, and obviously he has to get through today before we can even talk about how he would match up against Rafa. Yeah, it's hard for me to see it happening. Either one of them can beat Rafa for sure, but he's so invincible on clay. And yeah, he lost a few weeks ago on clay. It's true, but since that point, he has looked like completely unstoppable, and nobody's been even close. I mean, he hasn't dropped a set. But to Ben's point, Djokovic hadn't dropped a set until this morning. Is also playing incredibly well, trying to win his 4th major in a row. I feel like it kind of gets lost in the shuffle there, but we'll see what happens. It is a set piece right now, so we'll definitely talk about it on Slack. We have a lot of guys in our tennis Slack, in our sports betting Slack, so definitely get in there. We'll talk some tennis. Ben, let's talk a bit about golf. We don't have a ton of time. I know for the PGA, we kind of broke it down a week in advance. There's so much going on that we don't have a ton of time to hit up Pebble. But do you have any kind of early thoughts on the course? Like, who does it suit? Is Brooks just going to win every major? What are you thinking about it?
Probably, which is just awful for me. This is going to be we see this every year with the U.S. Open. It toes the line, and sometimes it goes too far in terms of fairness and just being able, or good shots even rewarded. In some years, the answer is no. So I expect brutal conditions. If it's windy, forget it. I saw a video, as a lot of people have, with Patrick Cantlay showing the rough. You can't find your ball. It's one of those. So it's certainly not a course you're looking to overpower. I think that sets up well for guys who are more technical, who can more weather those storms. The guy that comes to mind for me is Justin Rose. Not playing great. You can get him 15 to 20 to 1 in that range, behind the big guns, and he's just someone used to brutal conditions. That's not going to bother him. And I think when his game is on, it actually sets up well for a layup like this, where it's going to be really, really ugly out there if they get wind. Yeah,
I know that course, right, in particular seems to get an insane amount of wind.
It's right on the ocean. So yeah. If I've seen some people, and obviously a lot of values come out. If you're looking, there's some guys playing now that have let up. Stenson looks really good right now. I think he sets up well, but that number is dropping based off what he's doing in Canada right now. Snedeker, same thing. He's like 8 under today. So those are names. And then the last guy I want to mention is Patrick Cantlay. Obviously is coming in crazy hot off Memorial. I don't love the number, but it's hard not to think that his game shouldn't translate at a course like that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, and I think you basically just hit on it, whether there was anybody playing, in Canada right now who may have been under the radar, but is playing really well. And I know you just mentioned Snedeker, who's a name that I was looking at as a long shot. Was there anybody else? You mentioned Stenson too. Anyone else that you're seeing? What about Paul Casey? What do you think about him?
Yeah, he's not playing in Canada right now, but he's one that's just, it's been such a weird year. He's always consistent, and he hasn't been this year, but he's winning. So I actually like him more than I would normally in a futures market. He's similar to me, honestly, another guy, Tommy Fleetwood, who we just haven't heard a bunch from him. The name's not really on the mind, where at some other spots, he's kind of been trending upward at the right time, and that reflects in the number.
I feel like Fleetwood is the guy that I keep using on the DFS side,
I
and
can't quit him either.
every major,
It's
just waiting for him to break through.
It's going to happen eventually, you would think,
It's gonna happen.
but it's there's a lot of those guys. You know, I talk about that in Slack a lot, where, you know, Decky's got to break through, Rahm's got to break through,
Yeah.
Brooks wins every major. So where are they breaking through? It's going to be a crowded field. Obviously, we're going to have a ton of content leading up to it next week, but I certainly expect, you know, even par might win something like this.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be your kind of typical, as you alluded to, U.S. Open, just brutal, just try and get through at par. If you can get through at par, you're going to be ahead of the game. I know, Evan, you're a huge golf fan and wanted to chime in on your Spieth takes, and Tiger Woods is good at Pebble, right?
I think I'll stay in my lane and we can move on, because otherwise you're learning nothing from me.
Sounds good. And like Ben said, we're going to have so much content next week previewing the U.S. Open. Ben's got his show on Tuesday and Wednesday. Ton of written content, obviously projections, ownership, everything. There'll be another Millie Maker on the DFS side, I believe. So that's something we're all interested in. And just a ton of options in the futures market. So stay tuned for that. Ton of content coming your way. Let's talk NBA, boys. Let's try and get through, I guess, as quickly as we can. But there's a lot to talk about on the NBA side. What are your thoughts going into this evening before I put any slant on where I'm coming from? Ben, what are you seeing for tonight?
You know what? I really don't have a super strong take on it. I think it's one of those things. If you thought the Warriors are just gonna win the series, if they're healthy, I think they're healthy, and, you know, Clay's gonna play. I would jump on him right now. This is the time. If you think, you know, it's just cumulative effect. Iggy's wearing down, Looney's hurt, Clay's hurt, obviously Durant is hurt. You probably missed your window, but, you know, you can bet the Raptors in a straight line. Obviously, you're still getting certainly value. For me, I honestly don't have a strong feel. I pretty much stayed away. But I'm interested to see, because you've been pretty dialed in with the Warriors along this little run.
Yeah, I think I've got a take, but let's see what Evan thinks, and then I'll offer my 2 cents.
So, I mean, I think it all comes down to how healthy Clay is. If he's healthy, I think they absolutely roll tonight. I think they come out firing. I mean, Curry can only do so much when you're losing 40-plus points a game, losing Durant and Thompson. They're not going to be able to win games. That's just not how it can happen. But they're going to come out pissed. The Warriors are going to come out pissed. They're going to come out where they know they need to win tonight. And that 4.5 it's a really tricky line, but personally, I think Golden State blows them out. I think Clay, the day off in Game 3, they did it on purpose, so he's ready to go and healthy for tonight. And with that said, I would lay that 4.5 or 5. I'd look for the 4.5 or maybe even down to 4 if you can get it. But I think the Warriors roll tonight, tie up the series. I don't know that they win the series, but I do think tonight is their night and they roll.
I believe that I'm going to be in the same boat as you, Evan. You kind of took all my thunder, but I'm glad to hear that someone else agrees with where I'm coming from. I do agree with you. I think you just lay the number tonight and just go with it. I wouldn't worry about like the money line or trying to mess around with that. I think tonight's the night that Golden State they're basically in a must win now.
Oh, no doubt.
Which seems insane to say that going into the series or even a couple days ago. But they need to win this game. If they lose, I think Toronto's going to win it in 5, which is insane. And there were some crazy numbers before the game ended about betting Toronto in 5 that you were getting like 15-1.
Yeah,
that's no longer around clearly. But
sure.
I think I do agree with you that Clay, so much of it depends on Clay, and I think he's going to be fine. But he needs to have a good game, and they need him defensively almost more than on offense, which seems crazy. But they can't rely on Iggy to really carry the load, to cover Kawhi, to cover Siakam. They can't rely on Draymond to play 45 minutes guarding both of those guys. They need Clay in there for his defensive prowess and of course, his scoring. So yeah, I'm gonna unless something drastically changes. I'm on Golden State tonight. If they lose, I think they're going to lose the series, which I didn't think was fathomable.
Yeah, I mean, injuries can do it to you, though. That's the NBA. They've gotten really lucky the last couple of years that they've stayed healthy. If you're losing two of your top scorers, I mean, it's obvious to me that they would be losing. Like, I don't know why people were so shocked of the Game 3 result. It's just we've gotten so used to the Warriors just dealing with it and going on and rolling. And when you're losing that much talent, you're losing that much talent. And Toronto's a good team, and they're not going to feel sorry for Golden State being hurt.
No. And the one thing about this Golden State team in particular, I think everyone acknowledged it didn't matter because they were so talented, but the depth of them was never really good. So it's just that's being exposed wildly. Looney was one of their only, and he's gone. So if Boogie, someone's going to have to give them something, because the one thing I just, to play devil's advocate, is Steph. I mean, I don't know if you can just pencil him in for that kind of game again. And if they didn't have that, it would have been major trouble. So they're going to need someone, as Evan mentioned earlier, when you're taking out that many points out of the lineup, you need someone. Obviously, Clay is going to have to carry his normal load because they just don't have bodies to pick up the slack.
I think the Looney injury was actually a lot bigger than people realize too, because they are so thin, and that without him, that means Boogie has to play more minutes. You know, I don't think he's quite ready to be playing 30 plus minutes at a high level. I think if he's in the high 20s, low 30s, that's ideal, and they need a great performance from him. Just because Toronto has so much size, he has to play on both ends of the court against Toronto. So he needs to definitely step up. I saw a report that maybe Looney might come back. I don't think for tonight, but potentially a game 5 or 6. That would be a huge lift. KD obviously is ruled out for tonight. Who knows what his status is? You know, Kerr had said that he was supposed to scrimmage, but then didn't. It's hard to know, and there is a tipping point. You know, I thought, as we talked about a few weeks ago, when KD first went down, that Golden State could kind of leverage that and kind of get back to their old way of playing with really fast, all pick and roll, not as much ISO ball, and they were successful doing that. But just naturally, when you lose Clay, you lose Looney. It's just such a multiplying effect on the team.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, we're going to see tonight. Not that this is a hot take. For me, whoever wins this game is winning the series. I think that's pretty correlated.
I agree with you.
I think something worth exploring tonight is the Golden State team total, because, like you said, Jordan, they're going to be running, playing their old way, going fast, trying to hit threes. We both agree that we think they're going to roll tonight, and while if they do that, they're going to put up a lot of points doing it. I think the team total might be something worth exploring.
And a few other, if you do think that Golden State is going to win tonight and are kind of on board with what we're saying, that they're going to win the series, Golden State is the dog for the series now. You can get plus money on that. You can get plus money on Steph being the MVP, slightly plus, but it is plus for both of those. Those are a few options to take a look at. I do have the updated betting handle, right, at least as of this morning, and it's pretty even 50-50 as to percentage of bets on each side for tonight, which is interesting. Usually for game 3, I thought it was I was on Toronto before the Clay news came out. I thought the line was just too high, and the Warriors were getting like 75-80% of the money going into game 3 before the injury was announced.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to me that it is about 50-50. I would actually think it'd be a little bit higher for Toronto, given kind of the recency bias.
I think just people still, Golden State, it's just kind of been such a foregone conclusion that they're going to win for years now. I think a lot of people still get stuck. I think Evan kind of alluded to this, like people just automatically assume no matter who they have on the court, they're just going to win the series. And obviously that at some point becomes not the case.
They're a team that you're scared to play against. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Toronto, by all logic, made sense in Game 3, and it probably makes sense in Game 4. Given me and you, Jordan, are clearly on that, but people are just scared to play against a team that's been so consistent and so good.
Yeah, you guys are both right. It's an interesting spot for sure tonight. So we'll keep an eye on it. There could potentially be some really juicy in-game options, which we've talked about recently on how valuable that can be, and you can really get some plus EV spots in game, especially if one team gets out to a bigger lead. So take a look. Make sure you're following that pretty closely. Any last thoughts on NBA guys, or you want to get into the ponies?
No, let's do it.
Of course.
All right, boys. Well, Evan, this is why you're here. You're here for your hot NBA takes, but also your Belmont and horse racing knowledge. Ben, obviously, no slouch either. So let's talk Belmont. It's the 151st running. Both of you guys have created content that's on our site right now, previews, some statistical background information. Evan, you also did a short video, which is on our YouTube channel, going through some of your early thoughts on the race. Evan, why don't we start with you and just kind of get your overview going into the race? You know, obviously there's no Triple Crown potential here. What are your thoughts kind of going into it?
So going into it, I think that this race is pretty down to the two standouts, to be honest. I think the outside is where you look, and number 9, War of Will, and number 10, Tacitus. They've kind of been the most consistent 3-year-olds on this Triple Crown trail. I've been on both of them since the Derby. War of Will, I had him in the Preakness, loved him in the Preakness, won the Preakness, so I'm not getting him off him now. I stand with number 9, War of Will. I think you can find some value underneath. The Belmont is a really, really funky race in the fact that it runs 1.5 miles, and most of these horses will never do that again. So distance becomes a question, but both of the sires of War of Will and Tacitus can get the distance without a problem. And I think both horses showed in their races that they had plenty left in the tank past the finish line. My one concern with War of Will is he's the only horse running all 3 of the Triple Crown races. So that is a little concerning that he might be a little tired. But seeing content from Mark Cassidy, the trainer, he seems to be pretty confident with his horse. They've been a little lighter with him as far as workload and how much he's actually doing between the Preakness and now. So I'm not as concerned, but that can be a concern for some people. I'm going to go War of Will, and if you kind of want to look for long shot plays, the 7 and 8, Sir Winston the 7, and Intrepid Heart the 8 are kind of my funky underneath horses to use in exacta and trifecta plays. But the field's great. It's going to be an awesome day of betting, and I'm really excited to watch an awesome card at Belmont.
Okay, good. Let's go to Ben. Let's see what you think, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean it's hard not to have a similar mindset where you just have 2 options up top that they just figure the best for various reasons. I think we split a little. I lean Tacitus personally. Rallied in the Derby. Finished, quality start, obviously. War of Will, impressive at the Preakness, got a great trip. Tyler Gaffalione, by the way, becoming my favorite jockey. I absolutely love this guy. He's been just fantastic. Other than that, though, I mean, it's pretty wide open, and 1.5 miles is just such an awkward distance for a lot of these horses. You don't know. Intrepid Heart was a horse that Evan just mentioned that I also, he's a Tapit horse who obviously has bred some Belmont winners. We don't know a bunch about him. We saw him in the Peter Pan, which, but I think he's interesting. And there's really, after you get past the big 2, it's pretty wide open. You have a lot of horses at pretty good numbers. So underneath, I think you have really, really a lot of places that can dilute the exotic pools after you get past War of Will, Tacitus.
Yeah, so it seems like you both and basically everybody has put the War of Will and Tacitus into a top tier, and that kind of goes without saying, given the form and how these horses have run. Are you guys both thinking of having both of them in your exotics? Is there any value in going away from 1 or 2 of them, or is it just an automatic play, like we have to get both of them into our exotic plays?
So for me, I'll probably use both of them, but I'll do some funky, cheaper tickets just to mess around, because it's hard for every good horse to hit the board. Obviously, only 3 horses can finish in the top 3, and some horses just won't fire. I'll do some combinations where I just use War of Will in my trifecta, and I just use Tacitus in trifectas, because one of them might not hit the board, and that's where you're going to get your value and your payouts. A lot of my tickets will include both of them. I think both are solid horses. I think both are really bred well. I'm probably going to use both of them in most of my tickets.
How about you, Ben?
It's I'll look, as the day unfolds, obviously we'll be breaking down all the races, but once we get up to this one, I'll look for probably some spots to not include both, just because, your payout's going to be astronomically better if you can get that right without 2 of 3.
Yeah.
But, fading one just to fade them, just like in any sport, you got to have a reasonable line. So unless a couple other horses really start to gain some steam for me, I just don't see a lot of horses in this race that I really like in any capacity, to be honest. There's a bunch that I say, I guess you could see it, but besides the big two, and for me, in Intrepid Heart, I don't love a lot. So that makes it a little tougher.
One horse I wanted to ask you both about that people really I haven't heard much buzz, and probably appropriately there hasn't been a lot of buzz, is Everfast, who had a great finish in the Preakness to get second. Luis Saez is on board, who, of course, kind of infamous now because he rode Maximum Security in the Derby. Is there any kind of redemption arc we're looking at with Everfast, or is he just way too overmatched in this race? Looks like he's 12-1 on the morning line right now.
Yeah, so I mean, he's 12-1. I think he's 12-1 for a reason. The Preakness, I think a lot of people were thinking it's an anomaly. It could be a horse that's figuring it out late and improving late. But I mean, if you look at him on paper, he's won his maiden. That's it. He's been in big races, but he hasn't won. He's competed as of late, obviously with the good run in the Preakness. But before then, he was such a big odds in the Preakness because it was just such a question mark with him. And I don't think anything changes off that Preakness performance for me. And that's why you're not hearing a lot, is because I think a lot of people just think it was an anomaly.
I'm one of those people. I just have no. If he beats me again, so be it. I had no interest in the Preakness. There was, just looking back, Evan, you just said this. He won his first start, and he hasn't done pretty much anything since. And yeah, obviously a quality showing at Pimlico, but I just have a tough time just reacting to that. The odds obviously have plummeted naturally, and I get that. He's still a decent price, but it wouldn't be a shock in the least bit to see him kind of return to a middling showing once again.
Yeah, I think that's probably the more realistic outcome here. Any other of the, I mean, part of this is there's only 10 horses in this race versus 19 or 20 typically in the Derby. So you have a much smaller field. Ben, I know you mentioned Intrepid Heart. Is there anyone else that you're looking at in the more of the long shots?
I mean, Spinoff is a horse. Again, I don't have a real strong take. You got Pletcher, you got Castellano. I like that combination.
Yeah.
Nothing that's really stood out. It was good in Louisiana, but it's tough. Again, the 1.5 miles is such a wild card. We've seen time and time again. Usually it's, I remember Smarty Jones and all the a million triple, come in 2 for 2 and get nabbed at the wire. So we've seen that time and time again here. Obviously, some of the excitement's been taken out because we don't have that allure of a Triple Crown, but it is a race that's ripe for a horse to come kind of out of nowhere.
So,
how about you, Evan?
For me, someone we haven't talked about yet is number 3, Master Fencer. Mm-hmm. His 7th place finish and 6th through disqualification in the Derby. It's a little masked because he just was rolling at the end of that race. He had the fastest quarter mile since 2011 of any horse in the Kentucky Derby. And obviously this race is longer than the Kentucky Derby. So I was really intrigued with him going into this race. We kind of knew that this was the spot that the connections were pointing towards. However, 2 starts back at Keeneland when he worked out, he looked fantastic. And then his last workout at Belmont, he kind of did a little stumble at the stretch. He was having trouble switching leads. So I'm a little less intrigued with him as I was initially. I still think he's someone worth examining. 8-1, some value. He can hit the board. He'll be coming late. I'm going to use him in exacta and trifecta plays and think he's someone worth looking at. Just his 7th place finish in the Derby, I didn't want to kind of that go unnoticed that it was a better performance than the paper actually said.
Yeah, that's a good point on Master Fencer. I think I had seen that about his splits. The distance is obviously the variable that nobody can really predict. It's such a long race. Any other horses that are jumping out to you guys, or do you want to move on? I know, Evan, you wrote an article on our site breaking down the late pick four, and we can kind of get into some of the other races. There are more than a few other like really great races going on at Belmont this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, let me just touch on Bourbon War real quick. Also,
Okay.
that was a horse that really intrigued me going into the Preakness. He kind of ran a little flat in the Preakness. I think if he can get back to a couple starts back, that might be a horse you want to look at for exacta and trifecta plays as well. Other than that, I think we've kind of mentioned everyone that kind of stands out to me, which might be about half the field. But
Yeah.
I would think for me, it's War of Will on top, Tacitus picking up some of the pieces, and then trying to figure a long shot in for exacta and trifecta play.
Yeah. How about Ben? Any last thoughts on Belmont?
No, I mean, as always, you want to, if you can, check out it's not just one really good race. We got a boatload of great races. Check how the track is. I don't think it's beautiful in New York today. Weather shouldn't be an issue, but you still want to see, is the rail necessarily great? Are closures not being able to close? Things like that, when you have a bunch of horses that you're really close on, little things like that can make the difference.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on how it's running throughout the day. Evan, in your article, you talked about races 8 through 11, with the Belmont Stakes being number 11. Do you want to talk just real quickly how this concept works, where you're betting horses in different races? I know a lot of people are new into the horse racing world and betting on horse racing. You want to just give the 2-minute version on how the vertical wagering works?
Sure. So, just like in sports betting, when you want to get your odds better and do a parlay where you put multiple teams on it, horse racing has a similar concept with doubles, pick threes, pick fours, pick fives, and pick sixes. Obviously, as you add more races that you're trying to predict the winner, your payouts will get higher based on who wins the race. So I think the all stakes pick four, which I discussed in my article, races 8 through 11, is just an absolute must fire. It's $1.5 million guaranteed in the pool, which they'll go well over. They should reach 2.25, maybe even more than that. So it is a good pool to attack. There's grade one horses, so you're not really guessing as kind of consistently as you would be for younger horses that are in maiden races or allowance races. These horses are a little more consistent. So you're trying to piece together 4 consecutive races with winners, and every time you add another horse or another combination to that ticket, you're increasing how much your ticket costs. And like I've discussed, it's based on pari-mutuel wagering, so they divide the total amount of the pool based on how many people have the winning combinations. So when there's higher payout horses, less people are going to have it, and your ticket's going to pay bigger. So I would highly recommend looking at that article. I discuss and analyze those 4 races, and the sequence is just absolutely killer. The whole day in general, they have 13 races, 10 of which being stakes, and grade ones everywhere. It's an awesome card.
Yeah, it really shakes out to be a great day. So I know you wanted to hit on the Met Mile, which is race number 9. So why don't we talk about that real quickly and see, Ben, have you looked at the Met Mile field yet, or is it too early?
No, I've seen it. Like Evan said, these are 4 spectacular races. You got big name horses, a lot of horses that if you watch the races, a lot of these horses ran on Kentucky Derby Day or the Preakness, just not in those races.
Mm-hmm.
So you may see some familiar names. Met Mile specifically, McKinsey, who is one of those horses, obviously super impressive, probably going to be the favorite. We were talking a little before the show. There's a bunch of horses here that, for me, just at first glance, when you're talking about permutations, this is the race I probably open up. I don't see one horse that's kind of the standalone. I think you can kind of take a handful here, and whether, I know, Evan, I'll pass it right to you. You like Thunder Snow, you mentioned, who's another one of those definitely top dogs.
Yeah, I mean, in this race, there's 9 horses in the field, and I could argue that 6 of them you make a case to win, and I can't argue with you because it is a wide open race. Everyone in the industry has been talking about how this is just the showdown race of the year so far. It is the race that people want to see. It's the race that people have been excited about because there's so many options. I personally, like you mentioned, I like Thunderstone number 4. He's won the Dubai World Cup twice. I think you're going to get a lot of value at him. He probably will get ignored because there's so many good horses in this field. But I'm going to play him on top for a win wager. But as far as if you're playing pick four tickets, I think you have to spread as deep as you can in this field. I wouldn't even argue against you if you hit the all button, but it's just a dynamite field. McKinsey, like you said, looked great in the Alashiba. Mitoli won the Churchill Downs Stakes also on Derby weekend. Cold Front is coming off a win in Dubai, as is Thunder Snow. It's just it. They're left and right grade one winners. Awesome race. I can't really give you a great opinion about who's going to win because there are so many great horses in this race. And that's what makes it such a great betting opportunity is because the favorite's going to go off at 3-1 probably here. Maybe he's 5-2 on the line. I think he'll probably go off close to 3-1. But it's a wide open race that you can get value if you have a strong opinion on a horse you like, and you can get value on your pick four by hopefully hitting a price in this race too.
Absolutely. And just to mention, I know you just rang off Ferenzi Fire's another horse, 3 for 3 at Belmont. And he's going to be probably a pretty good price. So that's one where, like I said, I'll probably open it up and then we'll go from there. Not to touch upon it, but just looking at the 10th, obviously you got Channel Maker, you got Bricks and Mortar, who that's maybe where I'll shrink it a bit. I think that's where I lean there. And then if you can survive the first 3 legs, obviously you have everything to play for it, with the last being the Belmont.
Yeah, if you can get to that point, you are in very good shape if you get down to race 4 on a pick 4.
That's the plan, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I agree with you that the first 2 legs I think are wide open. The last 2 are a little more obvious type horses, and in the 10th in the Manhattan, I mean Bricks and Mortar I think is an absolute standout. You can even think about singling there to make your ticket a little cheaper.
I know you said 8 is a little bit more. Well, maybe wide open. I guess. What are your thoughts on the 8th race?
I think it's a little wide open. I mean, there is a standout there in the favorite.
Mind Control.
Mind Control.
9. I mean, he does stand out on paper a little more, but these horses, I mean, they're 3-year-olds, they're sprinters. Not all like Mind Control has been good, but he hasn't exactly been like super consistent. He does have some losses on his resume. I think he is beatable. And when you're playing a pick 4 sequence, if you think it's just going to be chalky all the way through, then it might not be worth exploring and playing. And this is a race where I think that it's not a cinch that he wins, so I'm going to try and look to go deeper and get a price. The one that stands out to me is much better for Bob Baffert. Makes sense for me. Complexity is going to be my top pick there for Chad Brown. But there's a lot of options that I'm going to try and go deep in the 8th race and try and hit a price. And that's where I stand in this sequence. Is I think the 8th is the most wide open as far as plays go. My long shot, the 10 Lexingtonian. I think his last race in the Chick Lane was really nice, and if he can step off that performance, there's no reason he can't win that 15-1 and get you a nice price in there.
Yeah, at 15-1, that'd be a nice starting point on a pick 4 card there.
No doubt about it. And it's funny you say that because the horse that I like in that race is actually a bomb, and he's 15-1. I had him on Derby Day as Baracho, the 3. Now, big step up. He was a really nice price on Kentucky Derby Day, but that's a horse. I think this is the race to, try to, because hitting a pick 4 obviously is great. But if you have 4 favorites, so, it's pari-mutuel wagering. So it doesn't, if everyone's going that way, you're going to get paid a little, but it's not going to be, you want to have some type of leverage in there. And this is the type of race where I think it is, if one of these favorites is going down, I'm more apt to think that this rather than, Bricks and Mortar goes down just at first glance.
Completely agree. I mean, this is the race to pick your spot, and I'm honestly going to try and do some tickets where I can try and hit the all button here if I can, because I think there's a lot of horses that can win this race. I agree with you. Baracho makes sense if he can step off his last performance. I'm going to try and get a price here because this is the race that I've kind of targeted as there's a lot of opportunity for value here.
It's pretty fascinating because we've talked about it a little bit, but mostly we've talked about exotic bets, in the horizontal means where you're just betting multiple horses in one race. But like you said, Evan, it is basically like a parlay, just in different races. So there is a ton of opportunity. And like you said, it's a $1.5 million guaranteed purse for this late pick 4. Should easily exceed that. It sounds like, right, Evan?
Oh yeah. That's that. most of these tracks put the guarantees up because they know they're going to get that pool. They don't want to put up their own money. It's just to flash, hey, there's $1.5 million here to pick. I would be surprised if it's less than 2.5 million. It might even go higher than that, but a safe estimate is that it's going to go over 2 million.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Get some more action down on the Belmont. I'm excited for that. Any, I guess, closing thoughts on the race or any of the races preceding, guys?
No, I think for me, it's just it is a really fun way to bet because obviously that's the difference between horse racing and most other things. You know, with it, you can do a 50-cent pick for something really low, and you can load up on 3-4 horses. Obviously, it adds up somewhat quickly, but you don't have to throw down crazy money to win potentially. You know, it's more of a lotto ticket-esque thing, and it only takes a couple bucks to potentially have a gigantic hit.
Yeah. On the website, I recommend a $56 ticket. But if you want to spend more the first 2 legs, you should go a little deeper. If you want to get creative, you can even single in the 3rd leg of bricks and mortar. There's a lot of way to play these pick 4s, and that's why they're such great wagers. There's so many different combinations that can come in, and if you happen to throw that dart and hit the bullseye, I mean, if you get a big price in there, those payouts just continue to grow and grow and grow. And while the Belmont might not be super intriguing because a lot of people are leaning towards the 2 logical horses, this is a way to get some value in your strong opinion on the Belmont, is taking some other races and trying to get shots there. Unless you just want to do, like you said, more of the horizontal wagers where you try and get your prices in 2nd and 3rd. This is a way to give yourself interest for a longer period of time than just the 2.5 minutes that the Belmont will be.
Yeah, I love it. Love there's so many options on how to bet and get money down. So we love that here. We've been doing a segment lately, Evan, where we just basically say, Ben, what are you betting on this weekend? What obscure event or any kind of like women's cricket match you got going on? So anything this weekend?
You know, I don't have a ton. As my golfers have imploded during the show. The one thing I did bet, Euro qualifying is going on 2:45 Eastern. I really like Denmark today. They're playing an Irish team that's 2-0 in the group, and then you look, and they squeaked by Gibraltar and they squeaked by Kosovo. That doesn't really tell the full story. Those are 2 of the worst teams in Europe. Now they go to Copenhagen to get a Denmark team that's playing really well. The line, you know, I saw for a straight win, -160, -175. Maybe moving a little, but not bad if you got it early. And I still think there's some value there with the Danes.
No Cricket World Cup, isn't that?
No. I try to stay away from cricket because I don't understand how to do it. So that's usually a prerequisite for betting. Those matches last like
days, right?
I don't really understand that, but
I'm with you.
Weird, wild stuff. So we'll see a little soccer action. Never hurt anyone for the afternoon.
Ben, are you saying Gibraltar is not a soccer hot spot of talent?
They're not exactly a powerhouse. Them and San Marino have some issues. Poor guys. I think Gibraltar's playing today. I think they played Georgia. But I have a feeling it could be tough sledding for the Rock of Gibraltar is about all I know about what that is. That's the extent of my Gibraltar knowledge.
Rock. I do know that as well.
Yeah. So
you are our geography guy too, Ben.
Yeah, I do what I can, you know.
Evan, how about you? And anything else you're monitoring? We hit on a ton of different sports. Is there anything you're looking at this weekend, or NBA, Belmont, tennis? Is that enough?
Yeah.
We haven't talked NHL, and I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued with St. Louis. I mean, you're not going to get any odds there, but I don't see them losing the cup at this point after that performance last night. They got outplayed, and they still won the game. Jordan Binnington has just been absolutely amazing. I mean, he's just stopping everything. Bruins had, 39 shots last night, and only 1 goes in. It's impressive, and I don't see St. Louis losing. I'm not telling you anything on the odds board that's going to give you a good value, but I don't see how they lose the series at this point. I don't see that being a possibility. Boston winning 2 can certainly happen, but I'm all in on St. Louis and absolutely wrapping it up in Game 6 at home.
So let me ask you this, because I think you may be following this more closely, certainly than me, but maybe Ben as well. Who would you say is the favorite? Is there somebody in your mind for the Conn Smythe? Because you're getting a lot of decent odds. I mean, it seems like it's Tarasenko is the runaway, but if he doesn't win it, is there anybody who might win the Conn Smythe that we can bet on?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to go Tarasenko, you can look at Binnington or O'Reilly. I mean, they've had really good series. I would say Binnington would be your next choice, and probably is going to be the next choice on the wagering. I mean, they usually the bailout is if no offensive player has kind of stood out, they go with the goalie if he's played well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I just think he's been the key to the series. I agree that Tarasenko should be the favorite, but if you want to maybe take a flyer, Binnington hopefully maybe has a shutout in Game 6 to win the cup and an awesome performance, and it steers people that way.
Ah, I like it. Okay, so yeah, we totally missed on the hockey, but like you said, yeah, there's so much going on. We talk about this every week. Like it seems like it's the dead zone, but we've already talked about, I don't know, 4 or 5 things, and we didn't even hit on hockey. We barely touched on golf and tennis, and the slow days will eventually come. I think maybe they'll never come.
Wait till July when the ESPYs are the only thing on. That's the slow time.
That's a tough week.
Right now we got action.
Yeah, All-Star Week is a tough one. We can break down the home run derby and whatever else is going on. All right, guys. Well, any final thoughts going into the weekend, Ben? How you?
No, I mean, as always, if you have any questions, drop in Slack. We'll be around. I'll certainly be around tomorrow, watching these races, watching the golf, and then leading up to the U.S. Open, which is one of my favorite weeks of the year for the golf world.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to this weekend, next week. How about you, Evan?
I'm just going to be – my mind is going to be glued to Belmont Park this weekend. I mean, both today and tomorrow, the cards are great, especially on Saturday. So many betting opportunities. We didn't even talk about some of the Grade 1 races that are – I think they start with the Grade 1 in the 4th race. There's 13 races on the card. All of them are excellent. I'm going to be firing away at Belmont this weekend. That's where my money's going.
Same here. Well, good luck, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.